Good day, everyone. My name is Merv Lapus. I'm the Vice President of Education and Outreach for Common Sense Media. We are here today to talk about media literacy. Now, in today's fast-moving digital world, the ability to navigate and critically engage with information is essential for personal empowerment, civic participation, and really protecting democracy. Now, media and information literacy equips people to access, evaluate, create, and responsibly share information across platform. And you've seen that across likely the many different platforms you all are using. But in an era of really sophisticated disinformation, generative AI, the challenges go like way beyond teaching individuals just to spot the fake, right? So this recent Rethinking Media Literacy, a new ecosystem model from information integrity, is a report that came out from the World Economic Forum, which calls for a whole of society approach. It combines the disinformation lifecycle from pre-creation to post-consumption with the socio-ecological model that maps interventions from the individual to the policy level, which I think is phenomenal. Together, these frameworks show where efforts can be most effective and how to align education, platform responsibility, community engagement, and even policy support. Now, this work reminds us that media and information literacy isn't just an educational skill set, it's a structural strategy for strengthening public trust and democratic resilience. So, here with me today to help us explore this report and to challenge us to think about how we can really contribute to building an information ecosystem where truth really does thrive is Agustina Caligari. Agustina is the tech governance lead at the World Economic Forum. She's got over 13 years of experience working across public policy, technology, and international cooperation, and she is the communications and policy professional focused on helping shape a digital world that is far more inclusive, safe, and trustworthy. So glad to have you with us, Agustina. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi, Mer. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's the first time for me doing something like this. So I hope it goes well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna go great. Well, I was really interested, and one, thankful of
Yeah.
being part of this work. But I'm actually really interested in before we jump in, kind of like the models, like what is the real goal and the intention? Why did you lead this group to really develop this ecosystem model for information integrity?
Yeah, as part of the Global Coalition of Digital Safety at WEF, we've been working at the World Economic Forum. We've been working to identify ways of tackling harmful content online. And as part of our global risk report that was launched last year and the year before, myths and disinformation were identified as one of the main risks for the next 2 years. So leveraging the global community and the expertise that we have within our community, we decided to take a closer look at the information integrity ecosystem to try to unpack some of the challenges that we are seeing across the disinformation life cycle and contribute to a very, I would say, challenging discussion. Of course, the report addressed some issues related to media information literacy, but it's not a silver bullet. The intent is to provide a framework that allow us to think and rethink some of the interventions that we are seeing across the ecosystem and identify next steps. So happy to be here to unpack a bit more what we have produced as part of this work.
Yeah, well, I know two of the things that really are highlighted in this work are two models that are pretty well outlined, and I would love for you to kind of talk a little bit about each model. The first one is the disinformation life cycle, and then the other one being a socio-ecological model. So, could we start with kind of the disinformation life cycle? If you can kind of just walk us through it a little bit and describe kind of what it is and what we should be learning from looking at that particular model.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the framework that includes the two models present is actually the main contribution of the report and the main contribution of the community. And as you well said, the report presents two complementary frameworks that are crucial for understanding and combating disinformation from this whole of society approach that you already mentioned, which was the goal of this community paper. So on the one hand, we have the disinformation life cycle model that basically tracks how false or misleading content moves from creation to consumption and impact, and it follows this stage. It's production, distribution, amplification, consumption, and post-consumption. And at each stage, I would say that what we try to highlight is that there are opportunities for interventions that focus on media literacy. So for example, at the production stage, we can improve source transparency, and we can help people from all ages identifying those sources. And during, for example, the amplification phase, we can work on slowing the spread of false information by, for example, creating awareness about this impact. So with this model and seeing the entire life cycle of this information, we try to see where the gaps and the opportunities are. And the SafeCon framework is also key because it's a socio-ecological model that basically places individuals and the content inside a layered system. And these layers include individual, interpersonal, community and organizational, technological and platform and policy and society levels. With the goal of showing that people's information behaviors are shaped by this relationship or their relationships, institutions, platform design, and broader society norms. So now, if you combine the two models in this framework that we are presenting here, what we want to have is a tool that can be used to understand the full ecosystem and where the challenges and the opportunities are. Because again, the life cycle identify where this information travels, while the socio-ecological model tells you which actors and structures must act to stop it. So that's overall how it works.
So in putting this together, I imagine this wasn't something that you just kind of put together overnight. Can you walk me through a little bit of kind of the work that it took to get to this point where we were able to really publish kind of these models and how they work together? Like, can you walk me through how this work started? You mentioned that it was connected to some work through the World Economic Forum in terms of its focus around looking at disinformation, media literacy. But as you started this process, how did you get to this development?
Well, I can talk for hours about that because it was really a community effort. As I said before, I'm leading the work of the Global Coalition of Digital Safety. And as part of the coalition, we have a community of over 50 members from all stakeholders, government, regulators, private sector, academia, civil society, and we bring all of them together to try to unpack some of the challenges that we are seeing within the digital ecosystem with a focus on online harms. And as I said, we identified a few years ago that disinformation was a key topic, and that as a community we could have a global discussion on how to address this challenge. So the way that we work is that we formed a working group, and we conducted several meetings and several consultations with our members to try to firstly define what we try to accomplish, and the main goal, which we all agree, was to have this all of society approach to different information instead of focusing only on one, I would say, piece of the cake. That's why we try to unpack, far from being perfect, all what it means to have a whole of society approach for this information. And we ended up with the two models because we thought as a community that both models could help think about the systemic risks around this information more holistically. But we also wanted to focus on the intervention side, on the solution side, on what is actually happening out there that is helping address those challenges. So that's why in the report we also highlight some case studies that describes interventions across some of the levels that we present in the model. And to conclude, I have to say that it was because it was a community effort. It took us more than a year to put a resource like this together, but the main value of it is that, again, it's a community effort and it was done in a multi-stakeholder way.
Yeah, and when you talk about community, I mean, we're talking about educators, researchers, policymakers, industry professionals that represent a lot of these platforms that are oftentimes being brought into some of these discussions. Who else was a part of this kind of like coalition of people to help inform this direction?
Well, you mentioned mostly everyone. We have
Okay.
some of the platforms that included some case studies in the report. For example, there is a case study from TikTok. We have a community of trust and safety experts, but because we had a focus on media information literacy for this specific report, we wanted to have a more diverse representation of organizations that are working on the educational side, and that's why, for example, we had you. Common Sense involved in that work. We also have UNESCO contributing to the way that we are framing media information literacy, and we have some academics that have expertise on the educational and digital literacy front. Yeah.
Amazing. So moving forward then, right, systemically, how are we actually going to move forward making media and information literacy more of an essential pillar of kind of healthy information ecosystems rather than just kind of a tool or additional skill set? It's oftentimes communicated as like, you should learn a little bit more about like how to navigate media, and it's a skill that's taught either in formal education or something that they bring through presentations. But how do we do more than just teaching it as just a skill and really making it a part of kind of our natural ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. But what we wanted to do with the report, I would say, is not to put the burden on the user and not to tell you need to learn more, you need to gain these skills. What we wanted to do is to make media information literacy a fundamental part of our information ecosystem. And again, that's why I go back to the whole of society approach, because we need to make it structural, not optional. And again, we need to work around this collectively and not put all the, I would say, the burden on one sector, one stakeholder, or even on the user. But we also need to acknowledge that media information literacy is not a silver bullet. And with that, what we are actually proposing is some steps that could help move towards making media information literacy an essential pillar. And for example, in the report, we highlight that we need to embed media information literacy into formal education at all ages, not just at one particular age, because this isn't just an add-on, but it should be integrated into the curricula and also teacher training as well. In terms of platform design and product standards, they should be aligned to encourage critical reading and source attribution or source identification as well. And we also highlight that it is crucial to build measurable learning outcomes and accountability frameworks that can help us track progress. We mentioned that it's not something that we go deeper into report, but I think it's an important topic that we need to address as a community, because even though we have unpacked some of the interventions, and this is not only happened for media information literacy, but for all the work that we're doing around digital safety, it's sometimes difficult to understand what is the impact that these interventions are having. There are different reasons for that. We are using different systems to measure maybe sometimes different things, but also sometimes similar things. And also we have a strong focus in creating multi-stakeholder governance that ties policy incentives such as grants, procurement, regulation to demonstrable media information literacy in integration. So when schools, institutions, different companies, policymakers coordinate around shared metrics and incentives, media information literacy, I would say, stops being optional and becomes part of this, becomes a systemic safe word, just to say like that.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I know I see it. I see it here in the States. I mean, I see that media literacy in different forms. I mean, it may not be specifically saying media information literacy, but there is a general essence around the conversations that are happening that all tie really closely into media information literacy. But we're seeing it internationally. We're seeing it from country to country. in many ways that are passing really rules, regulations, policies, and recommending that these conversations are a part of not just the education ecosystem, but really, like you mentioned, kind of that bigger, broader one. So, as you think about the work that you all are doing at the World Economic Forum as it relates to kind of bridging the gap between international communities and establishing more more of media information literacy as a global pillar, um, like, what are some ways that you all are trying to bring that conversation, outside of just this great framework in the report? Like, what are ways you're actively trying to bring international communities into the work?
Yeah, I would say that at the World Economic Forum, this is what we do. Basically, we focus on bringing together diverse voices, diverse stakeholders to discuss concrete solutions to some of the most pressing digital issues, such as online harms. And this is what I explain in the terms in the terms that we work, because we convene cross-sector and cross-border coalitions, including government platforms, civil society, educators, and researchers. And our goal is actually to translate some of the solutions or best practices or insights that we are seeing out there into tools that help us advance the conversation at the global level, because we also recognize that digital safety overall, and then we can focus more on media information literacy, is not an easy topic, and there is a lot that we can do in terms of creating a more comprehensive way of thinking about harms and also literacy across the different stakeholders. And with the focus on literacy, we saw a lot of interest from this report, but from all the work that we've been doing around digital skills. So our goal is to continue in creating these spaces where we can advance the conversations at the international level, and try to also highlight some of the case studies, some of the best practices that we are seeing in different countries or led by different organizations, and try to shed light into some of the solutions, the things that are working and are creating impact.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I mean, so as an organization, Common Sense, we're really focused on how we empower kids and families to really, think about the media and technology in their lives, and really build agency, skill, and understanding, and recognizing the impact. So media information literacy has a lot of strong ties to digital literacy, to well-being, the impact of what we see and what informs our feeds can have a real impact in the way that we go in our day-to-day lives. So as we think about kind of the work that we're doing, not just nationally, but globally as an organization, how do you see that work fitting into this framework and this complex matrix of looking at community and supports and education?
Well, that's a good question. And firstly, thank you very much for all the contributions into the report. There is a very interesting case study about the work that you've been doing around media information and literacy that I invite everyone to read. And I think that what we see is that, well, Common Sense plays I would say, an operational role in this ecosystem, because you are on the front lines producing age-appropriate curricula, rating and recommending content, and advising parents and educators. So I think that you have a key role in translating complex research into usable classroom materials. That is something that we are really interested in seeing, because we see a gap in terms of some of the discussions that are happening at the global level and what is actually happening on the ground. So we think that, well, that organizations like yours played a vital role in translating or in narrowing this gap that we are seeing, and that's why we try to build the communities that can bring in that local and on-site point of view. So I would say that there is an important role in terms of bridging the gap between academic research and practical implementation in home and classrooms. And your work complements the broader ecosystem by providing actionable tools and resources, and even evidence-based, because I think in the report we mentioned that, if I'm not mistaken, LSE review and assess the results of the program. That sometimes is very difficult to get. And that put media information literacy principle into practice at the individual and the community levels, going back to the model that we presented report. So yeah, that's basically how we are seeing it.
I really appreciate that. I think the reality is, I mean, yeah, it is incredibly challenging sometimes to be able to take all the big goals or all the big, wide, broad brushes that we're hearing in the media, that we're hearing about media information literacy, and how do we actually make it more relatable to an educator, to a parent, to a community leader, where they recognize that they are a part of the solution in the way that they role model, in the way that they communicate these types of skills, in the way that they train and provide guidance in how to navigate what's online. Because there is like you mentioned, there's so much pressure on the consumer. We need to make these thoughtful decisions. We need to learn how to navigate. But how do we also recognize that sometimes consumers are maybe also creators that just didn't recognize the impact of what they shared or what they created out there because of the sense of following a trend or following a kind of experience that they feel connected to. And so that means that we need to really consider the impact and the way that we think as individuals, as community members. So if you were to take all of this work that you all are doing, and as we think about media information literacy, how do we move forward for communities and even the individual level? What are some things that we might want to consider as a community, industry, or individual when it comes to media information literacy?
Yeah, and I think that the main challenge that what we are working towards is that despite that we are recognizing the importance, despite that we are recognizing the need of having more awareness about the importance of media information literacy, what we've seen is that the efforts remain fragmented. So most initiatives focus on youth, on formal education, leaving significant gaps in adults, for example, and lifelong learning. That is another thing that we need to look more closely. So there is a lack of coordination, and I would say long-term evaluations and resources that is impacting not only the educational sector but all sectors. And that's kind of what we want to do from the role that we have with the coalition and at the forum. Is basically try to bring together the different stakeholders to reduce the fragmentation in the ecosystem, and that to provide case studies that help understand why this is important, and also make it part of our overall work about technology to governance overall. So as a next step, what we are going to be doing is continue focus on online literacy more broadly. This report was about media information literacy for tackling one specific term, that is information, but we see the need to go beyond that and unpack a bit more what are the overall challenge of digital literacy or media information literacy, depending on how you want to frame it, and try to have this global conversation and identify how we can bring the different view, the different programs and the different initiatives together to identify how we can escalate some of this work, and where are the gaps and opportunities for the whole ecosystem. And another thing that we are going to focus on is, I don't want to call it future harm, but more about emerging risks, how we prepare ourselves for what's next, what is the future, for the future. Of course, we cannot predict what is going to happen. We are seeing how fast the ecosystem AI is moving, but we want to have a frank and honest conversation with our communities to at least ask ourselves the right questions when we think about what the future. So we are going to be having a foresight exercise and a report that tries to bring into the table a framework that allow us to think about emerging risks with mindset of solutions and opportunities. And we started that work a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully by beginning of the year we will be able to present that. And of course, for that work, online literacy is an important piece, because as we prepare for the future, and as we've seen in this report, digital literacy, media information literacy is essential for having a trustworthy and secure digital ecosystem.
That's awesome. I mean, there's a lot that's ahead of you then. I mean, now that this is out,
Yeah.
it sounds like there's much more work to continue and different ways to kind of apply some of this framework and learning into the communities you all are directly supporting, the constituents that you're bringing together. We have a lot coming down the pipeline with back to school that's happening right now. This is a great time to address these kinds of conversations, not just in the classroom, but with your staff, with your families that you support. We've also got Digital Citizenship Week and Digital Literacy Week coming in the mid-October. October is a pretty busy month that kind of recognizes a lot of these kinds of issues. There's emergencies everywhere. I can hear it. There is also National Media Information Literacy Week at the end of October. Through working, I spend time now also in support, it sounds like, with some colleagues over at UNESCO with the Global Media Information Literacy Alliance, preparing for International Media Literacy Week as well. So there's a lot coming down the pipeline of opportunity to really address these issues. And as you said, it shouldn't just be those one times, but it's a good time to start if you haven't started yet, how to build in these kinds of conversations. If you were to leave all of the folks that are listening or listening eventually to our conversation, if you're going to leave them with one thing or one call to action, what would that be as we talk about media information literacy? What's one thing you would want them?
That's a good question. I think that it's something very, very simple, but we know that we cannot solve any of these issues by our own. So that's why we keep encouraging about multi-stakeholder collaboration, because we think that without that, we are not going to be able to shift from information environments that are fragile to resilient. And we really want to focus on resilient things and on building information ecosystems that are trustworthy and secure. So I keep highlighting that, and I think we hear it every time, but we actually need to collaborate, to share ideas and to work together, because any single actor can solve any of these issues alone, and we recognize that, and that's why we continue pushing forward for this type of work. That far from being perfect, what we want to do is unpack some of the conversation and encourage everyone to contribute. So my call to action will be to continue the conversation. People can reach out to me. They have my name and my last name. They can look for me on LinkedIn, and we are happy to continue discussing how to contribute or provide insight into this work.
Well, I am also very excited to continue in this work, how I can be useful, how we can be useful as an organization. So please keep us connected. It was such a great experience to be part of the process and actually also see what comes out of it, because I think it is a really interesting matrix of considerations that we all play a role when it comes to, in this particular case, media information literacy and disinformation, and where we can create policies more thoughtfully, where we can provide education that's not just an individual skill, but is transferable into the way that we do everything in our lives, that we are accountable in the way that we develop platforms that are really for positive, incredible opportunities for folks to grow, thrive, and learn, but recognize that as we create these spaces, that we're also accountable to how we make sure that these are safe spaces for everyone that is going to be on them, and how we just continue to be just really thoughtful, civil human beings. There are people on the other side of every interaction we have, so how do we be thoughtful to those people, those stakeholders, and each other? So Augustina, I am so thankful for your time, for you being here. Where can folks go to learn more about the work that you all are doing over at the World Economic Forum?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you very much for the conversation, and I'm happy to share the sources from the report for everyone who wants to read it and get involved. I think people can go to weforum.org and look for the Global Coalition of Digital Safety, and if not, the website if
We can put the link to
well,
the
it's quite
report
long.
directly.
It's quite long, so I
We can
can
put
leave
that into the
the link. But
recording.
weforum.org is our main website, and then you can navigate. There are all tons of resources. But if you focus on, you can research media information literacy of digital safety, and you will find not this report, but also other reports that we have developed with the community.
So you all are doing very important work, leading a coalition across international lines to do good work for the people in my household. So I really do appreciate you and appreciate your work. And thank you all for being here today for another conversation with Common Sense Media. We look forward to learning more about your questions, your challenges, issues, the things that will best help you as you navigate media and technology in your lives. And we love to be able to bring in partners like Augustine and the folks over at WeForum to continue these lively discussions. So thank you again. Have a great rest of your day. And Augustina, thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.